Before I begin, allow me to clarify that this video is not about Yu-Gi-Oh! Believe me, I share the same irrational love of Seto Kaiba that all of you do, but this Kaiba is something completely different. This 12-episode series was directed by Masaaki Yuasa and animated by Madhouse back in 2008, which was a fucking great year if you're a fan of Madhouse, or original anime in general. Kaiba is basically what would happen if you took a cyberpunk action script and set it inside of an insane Dadaist cartoon nightmare. Essentially, it's an adventure show that starts off episodic and then slowly develops a continuous plot as it goes along. The first 7 episodes basically exist to establish the world that Kaiba takes place in as exceedingly fucked up. Despite the deceptively cutesy artwork, this show probably features an abnormal amount of sex and violence in comparison to most anime. Most of the individual storylines are really dark and depressing. A lot of them have shitty things happening to good people, only for it to turn out later that those good people were actually shitty. Or that shitty people, who shitty things happen to, turn out to be better than you first thought. You might think you hate a character at first, but then you learn something new about them that makes them kind of endearing. It's very even-handed in its characterization, which makes the world feel very natural and alive. Even though everything in the show looks so inhuman and strange, it actually feels more human than most anime does. The characters feel like real people with all the flaws that real people have. And for some, that might actually be a turnoff. You might not easily find characters you really like in this show. And yet the show portrays the journey of these characters, the goals of these characters in such a way that you can't help but root for them because you can relate to it. At the core of Kaiba is a love story, and a very touching one at that, and it might just give you the romantic warm fuzzies if you are so inclined. Kaiba is a very adult show, and I don't just mean that because of all the sex and violence that happens. It can be a little bit hard to follow if you're not giving it your full attention. Now, I don't think that Kaiba is really that difficult to comprehend. Most of what happens in the show is actually really straightforward. It just doesn't hold your hand through everything. This is not the kind of show that you could just have on in the background and easily understand everything that's going on, but if you are paying attention, it's not really hard to follow. Ultimately, as I said before, the story really is pretty much just any cyberpunk story. It takes place in a world where everyone's memories can be removed from their body, and those memories can be implanted into other bodies. And it explores and fleshes out how this concept would affect society, how people would act in a world where immortality is essentially possible, but only for the privileged. It shows how in a world where morality starts to fall apart, the fabric of society deteriorates, and those without privilege can easily be killed, whereas those with it can live a life of decadence and ecstasy. It has a pretty fucked up worldview, but in the end it also values some very human things like love and compassion. Obviously this show isn't going to be for everyone. The art style alone is going to turn a lot of people off, and some would argue that if the script really is pretty straightforward and didn't necessarily need to take place in such an abstract world or have such a weird art style, then why bother with that art? But personally, I think there's an inherent value in something being different. I think it's exciting, and it can teach us new things about ourselves or about the world around us to see something that is different in some way from what we're used to. It expands our frame of reference and teaches us new things about the world surrounding us. Sure, it might not immediately conform to our tastes and expectations for what an anime should be, but if you let it, it might just expand your idea of your taste or what anime should be. Should you watch Kaiba? Yeah, I mean, I won't say it's my favorite show ever. I do think it's a little bit overhyped. The show gets 10 out of 10s put on everyone's favorites list. I don't know about all that, but I thought it was good. And given its reputation, there's a good chance you'll enjoy it even more than I did. If you just want to see a well-written and well-told story that might be a little bit different in terms of pacing or in terms of art style from what you are used to, then definitely give Kaiba a shot without second thought. It's only 12 episodes, I watched it in one go, so go ahead and do it.